Greetings, dissidents. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith, as always. Today we have a follow-up interview with a legit, real-life freedom fighter that you saw on this channel recently, fighting over in Hong Kong to help them. Welcome back to the show, sir. Good to have you back.
Hey, Patrick. It's good to be back.
Yeah, man. So just for the people that didn't see the last episode, tell us who you are and what you've been up to, and let's just jump right into it, because it's really cool from a activist perspective, but it's also like really important and kind of a heavy thing that's going on. So like give us like the who you are and the overview.
Absolutely. So I'm Ben Song. I'm a Dallas area native, and I went over to Hong Kong for 2 weeks recently to support the protest there, to be in the protest. I was there on October 1st, which was a major turning point, a tumultuous day. I got fully into the system. I got to meet a lot of the hardcore protesters that had been there from the beginning, and I returned safely somehow. I had some close calls, but I'm back now. I'm planning to go again in November. That's not initially, I wasn't sure I was going to do that. But I definitely feel like I have to go back. And there's been a lot to talk about. I feel like these have definitely followed me home in terms of everything in the news, and how the importance has really hit home for a lot of people.
It has been pretty fascinating.
Oh no!
Is that a cat attack? Are we being attacked? It is. That's cute. The cat knocked me off my train of thought. So you have safely made it back, first of all, from Hong Kong. That was the first thing that I was personally worried about. Like, I hear all these stories, and I think we're going to get into the media on this stream as well, so maybe this is relevant, but the stories and the impression that I have from the situation over there is it is one of it is not safe at all for Westerners visiting that area. If they say the wrong things, if they, do the wrong things in your case, then it's very easy to end up in a prison from which it's pretty difficult to escape. So I'm glad that you're home. Welcome home to the land of the free is what I was saying earlier, for, whatever that's worth. What does it feel like to be home? I know you said it kind of followed you back. Is it a relief? Are you planning on returning? What's that been like? All right. Stream's coming back online. Sorry for the interruption, guys. You can literally blame Microsoft, Windows 10 1903 update, and Microsoft for Skype. That's all I'm saying. So, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, let's see. Let me check our chat here. Make sure that everybody is still connected. Looks like we're still connected. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off, which was pretty much at the beginning. So sorry for the connection issues. Let's kind of start back with okay, my last question to you was, you did something ultra rare that not many people do, which is, you actually went and took action on your beliefs in another part of the world on other people's behalf that didn't even, it was like an altruistic act, right? What is your takeaway from having done what you've did? Like, what have you learned? What have you come back thinking about?
Wow, I had so many takeaways. It was an incredibly rewarding experience. I think to go out and support these movements, it can be incredible for your own life, to see the love and appreciation and support that someone from the United States was not only caring, but coming over to help and to share some of the risks. That was an incredible experience, and I feel like I left a part of me in Hong Kong, still in the struggle. It is a part of me, and I'm a part of it, which is why I feel the need to go back so soon. Other takeaways. So part of the reason I went is because I believed from the beginning that there were numerous implications for the United States, for the whole world. with what was going on in Hong Kong, the conflict between a popular movement for freedom and an authoritarian government, and also the tactics and strategies that were being used, the ways of organizing, the technologies. So I've learned a lot from that. And I actually saw an article recently from Quartz, which was, I believe it was Hong Kong is exporting its protest style, something like that. And it was about protesters in Catalonia adopting a lot of the tactics of Hong Kong protesters, including social media presence, a be like water kind of fast moving, flowing protest style, which is a break from the past where large protests typically occupied static positions for the duration of the protest. Wearing of masks to avoid surveillance and identification, and actually cross-coordinating the movement. The Catalonian side and the Hong Kong side, they've been waving each other's flags. There's actually a dedicated Free Catalonia rally in Hong Kong on the 24th. And that kind of international solidarity, I think, is the only way that you can win movements like this. You have to have the support of the whole world, especially when you have, a complete lack of weapons to be able to overcome the disadvantages fighting against these very powerful, very resource-rich authoritarian governments. So I learned a lot that I can help, potentially other movements with. I had an incredibly rewarding experience helping people on the ground. I really think, in life in general, people should just go for things. I think that's something we hear a lot, but may not necessarily act on. And I think those were my main takeaways.
Yeah. So what I was saying earlier, I was when we were interrupted was let's talk about the media now. And so the impression that I get from those areas is that it's very sort of unsafe for Westerners to go visit if they plan on sticking their head up, so to speak. And that's just with like normal like speech, like saying things that maybe would be out of place or whatever, much less actually helping, some kind of action on street activism, action against the government. Like certainly that just, to me, what I know, it just seems like an incredibly dangerous thing that would get you thrown in a gulag or whatnot. Is that impression accurate? I mean, you made it back fine, right? Or were you lucky? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I got incredibly lucky a couple times in the course of street protesting, but Hong Kong still holds the pretensions of being a liberal system. I wouldn't say it's a dangerous place for Westerners. The city of Hong Kong itself, as long as you keep your head down, you're right. There actually have been a couple Westerners arrested in the protests. I believe they were expats. Mainland China is very dangerous. It pretty much fits the exact profile you were saying. Recently, 2 American students who had like a group for helping English teachers come over, they were arrested on what the vast majority of people consider trumped up charges by China. That's a practice that China has used many times to fight back or put pressure on foreign governments. They arrested 2 Canadians earlier this year in kind of retaliation to some things Canada was doing. So it's a big danger. I've talked to executives and business people. They're afraid to travel to mainland China. They think that if you're at all high profile, you could easily be held hostage. So I would definitely say that mainland China 100% fits that profile of being very dangerous for Westerners right now. Hong Kong, on the other hand, even though they've cracked down, they've invoked emergency powers, they still have this pretension of being a liberal system. They have a due process and something of a Western set of laws. So you're fairly safe in Hong Kong as a Westerner for now. I think, as long as you're not directly involved in the protests.
Okay, so I remember there's this thing on YouTube. There's so many subgenres, but one of them is like there's these motorcycle vloggers, and all they do is they record themselves riding their motorcycle around various places in the world. And these two guys, I can't remember the names of their channels, but they are West. Sorry, what?
I believe it's Serpenza and Lao Y86.
Yes, is that from China?
Yeah. They're former expats in China.
It's so cool that you knew who I was talking about. Are they still alive? Because the last videos I remember seeing from them were like, the 10 things that are banned here or something like that. And then they just fell off my feed. I wonder if YouTube's censoring them or whatever.
YouTube definitely could be. They're definitely still alive. They both fled China, I think about a year ago. So they're in the US now.
Okay, well, so they're alive then. That's good to know. I feel good about that. All right, yeah, I was really worried about them because that's where like a big part of my impression of the area was coming from was these vloggers that I've been following for like 2 years. I had been watching their channel, and I just started seeing more and more and more like scary, problematic things going on in China. And I can't, if you go look at their videos, you'll probably see me in the comments. I'm like, get the fuck out of China. What are you doing? That's like the walls are closing in, and it's cool that they made it out. So let's, so about the media, I know that you had some things that you wanted to say about how the media over here, communicates the news about what's happening in Hong Kong with us. What were the things that you wanted to say about that?
All the controversies that have been in the media, it was really incredible to see because it timed right about when I was coming back from Hong Kong. So it definitely felt like the movement, the struggle was following me home, and people were really getting agitated. They were waking up to the situation. What happened with Blizzard, where they banned a pro gamer and took away his winnings for a very short pro Hong Kong speech, and what happened with the NBA, where they took the general manager of the Rockets, and they told him, you have to take down this pro Hong Kong statement that he made on his personal Twitter feed, and then the controversy that followed up with LeBron James being very tone deaf on that. And then some others that people may not have necessarily heard about, like Vans, who had to design a new shoe competition. And the leading design was a Hong Kong protester design. It was a shoe with with artwork depicting Hong Kong protesters on it. So Vans pulled that out of the competition. There was a Tiffany ad that got caught up. Some other ones that flew under the radar, Apple's Safari private browser shares data with Tencent, the massive Chinese media conglomerate. And another one is that I've been trying to spread around is ESPN had a segment about the controversy with the NBA in China. And they showed a map of China that is a Communist Party propaganda map. It shows an outline of China. It includes Taiwan. It includes a pretty big part of India that China, it's controlled, it's occupied by India, but China claims it shows that as being part of China. And it shows this thing called the 9-dash line, which is 9 dashes like an outline around the entire South China Sea. So people may know that's a major source of international tension, is China is claiming this entire sea, which is an unprecedented thing. It threatens Vietnam and the Philippines, who also, within that claim is their territorial waters.
I was thinking about. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, the last one that I can think of is Abominable, which is a DreamWorks animated film about a Yeti. Also had this 9-dash line. It showed a picture of Asia, and this 9-dash line was in the picture of Asia. which is clearly a Chinese directive. Someone from China is telling them to do that, because otherwise it's a ridiculous thing to do, to just put a dashed line in the middle of the ocean. And that caused the movie to be banned in Vietnam and the Philippines, because they're saying, well, this is China threatening us. So yeah, all of these controversies have been in the media right as I was coming back, and that was really interesting to see. And it's nice, because I think those missteps are getting people more involved with what's going on in Hong Kong and China.
Yeah, and so I'm a gamer, right? And a lot of the games that I've played over the past several years, hell, my entire life have been Blizzard games. I was way into all of the Diablos, hundreds of hours of my life, Overwatch, and then most recently Heroes of the Storm. These are their kind of big titles, right? And
yeah.
And Hearthstone is the game that you were talking about, that the player was in a tournament for and then was punished. And so I have followed, I feel like I was in on the ground level of Blizzard Entertainment, and I have just watched them just devolve into yet another social justice activist corporation. This started years ago with even before Overwatch, but it was highlighted with their game called Overwatch, where, every single character in that game is from a different location in the world, and it's overtly, forcing this inclusivity narrative, and they'll turn a character that was never gay before, suddenly he's homosexual. I'm not saying there's a problem with this. What I have a problem with, I don't have a problem with a rainbow of characters from all over the world. That's fine. I have a problem with it being an activist narrative that they're pushing. Same thing with obviously with homosexuals. I could care less who people enjoy sleeping with, but when you're manipulating your game to send political messages, I think a lot of gamers have a problem with that. And so that's kind of where I started shying away from Blizzard. And then now I don't know how much time you have today, but might be a good nuanced discussion to just discuss the Blizzard thing with this guy getting banned, because my kind of headline opinion of it was that if I run a company, there's kind of two forks in the road I can take as far as the decisions that I make. I can try and make my company apolitical and to appeal to the broadest audience globally, or I can try and make my company some kind of activist company. And I feel like you kind of have to be one or the other, because if you're trying to be an apolitical, neutral company that sort of just appeals to everybody and doesn't make any controversial statements and doesn't take a moral stand on any hot topic of the day politically, it's like that is sort of a defense in and of itself. You can be like, look, we have a policy that we have always abided by that says we're not going to take opinions on these topics and these current events and these moral issues that are popping up in the news day to day, moment to moment. And that seems fair. Look, we just want to make video games. Can I just make video games, please? That is a strategy that I think, a valid, fair strategy that a company can take. They can just, be that neutral person. But Blizzard hasn't done that. They have spent years and years now taking stands politically and pushing agendas of their own. They are very much an activist company. And so when they have this agreement with their players in this tournament to not do what they do, and then one of their players breaks that, I mean, granted, I cannot argue that the guy did not violate the contract that he had for participating in that tournament. It was very clearly worded, as I read the clause in the contract that everybody was talking about. It was very clearly worded that they didn't want their players to make statements that would troll or would upset part of their audience. And this guy definitely... Who did he upset, though? People in China? Is that the problem? Maybe you can kind of fill us in on that side of it. Who is Blizzard worried about pissing off? Because it's clearly, I don't know anybody in the Western world that got upset by anything happening in Hong Kong. Can you maybe give us that side of it?
Yeah. But with the contract, the takes that I've heard are a little bit different in that the way it was phrased, it can potentially be interpreted to mean anything, right? What is offensive to the audience? So there's potentially no way to avoid running afoul of that if Blizzard wants to say you offended somebody. But in terms of who it offended, it definitely did offend mainland Chinese, which is, a massive, over $1 billion person market. The mentality that is indoctrinated into the mainland Chinese people is that the government of China is indistinguishable from the country of China, which is indistinguishable from the people of China. So to say anything that is critical of any of those Chinas or casts it in a negative light is to insult all three.
It's like a massive groupthink where like everyone takes anything personally. Like any attack on anything government or country is a personal attack kind of thing. Well, much like the hashtag Americans I've been dealing with on the Facebook page recently, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar.
Yeah, it's very groupthink. It's very collectivist. I saw an interesting interview recently where some Chinese students in Australia were counter-protesting some Hong Kong protesters. And the interviewer was saying, why can't these people complain when the government is mistreating them or doing something wrong? And these Chinese students said, well, how come they get to complain? If they complain, other people will complain, and then everybody will complain. Nobody can complain. That is how you support China. And I was just like, crazy. Like I can kind of understand the logic, but it's such a crazy world to be living in that mindset.
Yeah, that's incredible. So Cotblock Hot Springs asks, what apps do the protesters use and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's been a huge part of the movement, of its implications for the future, is the technology used to organize. So the Hong Kong protesters primarily use two apps. One is Telegram. Telegram is a great app. Many tech people in the US have been promoting Telegram since it launched, I think, in 2014. It was created by two Ukrainian brothers. Basically, this was in the midst of the Ukrainian conflict, the separatist violence going on. And these two Ukrainian brothers basically said, we're sick of Russian hackers being able to tap all of our comms. Just anything Ukrainian people say Russia sees. So they created Telegram to be a highly encrypted messaging app. It's very much an activist company, like you described earlier. Their activism is to provide privacy and security for people. So the Telegram messaging app, probably the best messaging app out there. It's a huge part of the movement. You can create these group chats and customize them all different ways. The protesters use many group chats that are bulletin boards. So you'll have 20,000, 80,000 people in a group chat, and people will submit updates to the admins, and the admins will curate it and post important updates, such as where the police are firing tear gas, what high-profile arrests have happened, where planned protests are. People will create basically like flyers with upcoming events, and different groups will create these events. There's the Civil Rights Front, there's Democratic groups. Yeah, exactly like that. And so these schedules will be created, and then they will be spread through Telegram messaging groups. The other major app is called LIHKG. LIHKG is another really interesting app. It's a little bit opaque and unapproachable for me, simply because I cannot read or understand Cantonese. What LIHKG is it's a Reddit style message board website that also has an app, but it's much more secure. So it's only for Hong Kong residents. You have to have, I think it's a resident ID number. You have to have unique identifying Hong Kong information, and I believe you also have to be referred by another person. which is a effective security measure that the Chinese WeChat also uses. And then you're put on probationary status as a new member, I believe for 90 days. So if it's revealed that you're some sort of pro-Beijing troll or something, there's ways to easily and quickly remove you from the whole forum. So I'm not able to use LIHKG, firstly, because I don't have Hong Kong ID, and secondly, because it's almost entirely in Cantonese, and I can't understand Cantonese. But I think it's a really interesting technology to learn from alongside Telegram.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to follow these Telegram groups. Like right here, we have a timestamp. Two water cannon vehicles are spotted heading towards Central from Western Cross Harbor Tunnel. Like this is tactical update information that goes out, instantly encrypted in a hard to censor way. This is so fascinating to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It increases everyone's involvement in the movement. It crowdsources all of the intelligence. It allows the individual protesters to be so much more sophisticated and informed, because it's kind of this situation where when one person knows something, everyone knows it. People are connected in their experiences, what they're seeing. If someone sees some police brutality and they can catch a video of it, they can share it and everybody will see it very quickly, like within the hour. So that has been an incredible thing. I think that is definitely a sign for the future, is these high operational tempo movements. It's not like spreading around flyers. We're going to meet at this march in a month, and it's going to be for however many hours. Instead, it's every hour there's updates. Every few minutes something changes.
Yeah, like here's a status update, with like a list of a bunch of roadblocks and where they are. And then there's like meme warnings of smoke, like tear gas with like a little cutie little cartoon character. It's just, it's like first of all, it's fascinating because it's just a wildly different culture. So the way that they kind of communicate is just different, but it's been really interesting to watch. Like this guy's nice and bloodied. And then there's other memes going around about Hong Kong, like the Second Amendment is so that we don't have to use bamboo spears to defend ourselves. Like I don't know if you've seen those, but they're fascinating. There's been like images of street protesters using a bunch of bamboo to set up their own barricades and spiked barricades and stuff like that.
Right. The actual fighting has been interesting because it's very like primitive hand-to-hand fighting kind of things with throwing and shields, and it's very different. Wow.
Well, again, so you're planning on going back to this. Let's talk about that. Like, what's your motivation? I'm just going to kind of browse through these Telegram groups while we chat because this is just interesting information. But
absolutely, and I'm so happy you're in there. I'm so happy that other people that I have recommended to get in there have joined. It's incredible window. It's a movement, just like you were talking about. In terms of going back, initially I wasn't sure that I would be returning. I thought it might be a one-off thing. I definitely wanted to be there and protest, but there's a lot of things going on in the world, and there's other things that I want to do. But once I was plugged into the movement, once I was, with these people in the streets, hundreds of thousands of people, all sacrificing, all risking their lives, it was very different. I feel like I left a part of me in Hong Kong. The movement is going on. People I know are still in this life and death struggle, this existential struggle for their rights. And I feel like there's no other option than to go back. And another interesting thing is so many people have reached out and said, hey, I'd like to support you going forward. And so that has made it possible. It's not easy to do two trips in 2 months, especially getting some material that I want to bring with me. So yeah, I feel like there's no option other than to go back. I think the importance is just as much and probably more than it was before I went, and I still feel a part of the movement, even though I've returned to the relative safety of the U.S.
So, again, I'll reiterate the offer. I know we kind of misconnected last time, but if you go back and you have video that you'd like to share, my platform is certainly open to sharing those videos. Just so everyone knows, I'm also going to give him posting access to the Disenthrall Facebook page, so that he can share the updates with the Disenthrall quote unquote community. And I want to stay up to date. I want to follow your work over here, man, because there's no one else like actually putting action to the words of freedom in the way that you are. So this is hugely important learning opportunity. Like the lessons that you're going to learn over there, tactically, politically, like how people communicate, how political movements progress and evolve, and like if you have a goal. How does a massive group of people that are kind of sort of amorphously groupthink communicating via Telegram, how do you keep them moving in the same direction? Is there a group of organizers that are quote unquote more at the top or kind of, directing things? That's a good question, actually. Is there a hierarchy happening or evolving from this, even informally? And what does that look like? Is there a group of people, even, like I said, informally or just trusted people that are coming up with ideas, calling the shots in a way, or making suggestions? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I get this idea from a lot of people who've reached out to me in the West that there has to be some leaders, right? There has to be some leadership. I had an individual from Tennessee who said, hey, I work with a anonymous affiliated hacktivist group. Can we talk to someone in charge? And I said, look, there's no one in charge. It's this incredible thing. It's completely flat and hierarchy-less. Even people that the media likes to talk to, and people who've gone before Congress, there are individuals like Justin Wong and Denise Ho and some others that have been in the public eye. These people have respect, but they don't have any leadership or authority. They could call for whatever they want, but if people don't already agree with that and want to do it, they're not going to. And in fact, many of them, don't even have necessarily positive feelings of looking to them for leadership. The way things are organized is that there are small, more traditional groups, by which I mean things with a membership and you go to meetings and things like that, democracy groups, civil rights groups, and they will plan a rally. And their planned rallies are usually tiny, such that they expect, maybe 2,000 of their members, which actually is quite significant if you compare it to things in the U.S. But they will expect, maybe 2,000 of their members to come out, and they will bring like a microphone and a podium, and that information will be spread through Telegram and LIHKG, and then you have 150,000 people decide they want to go. Each person every day and every night is deciding individually what they want to do, where they want to go in the city. There's frequently basically always there's multiple protests, like 18 different sites where people have decided to gather, and people will individually decide where to go. Even if they live across the city, maybe they want to go downtown because that's where all the luxury shops and the tourists and the bankers and everything are. Or maybe they want to stay close to home and build barricades in their to protect their own neighborhoods. It's really an incredibly flat thing, and it is a huge advantage, but also, in some ways a disadvantage, which has been pointed out, that There's no leadership and authority. No one can say, well, I speak for the protesters, or even I speak for this sub-faction of the protesters, because there aren't even really sub-factions. It's very non-ideological. People have their different political beliefs, but it really doesn't come into play, and it has not created any factionalism whatsoever, which has been incredible. There's not what the socialists want, and there's not what the monarchists who want to rejoin Britain want. Everyone's very united. There's one conversation, and it hasn't broken down into subgroups at all. My theory on that is actually that it's having leadership that allows those subgroups to form. It's having representatives that can say, well, our ideology wants this, or our ideology wants that. When it's everyone on equal terms, I think that has allowed for a lot more complete unity and single-mindedness in just getting these 5 core demands.
I mean, like I just stumbled on this picture just now, and like I'm like half choked up. Like my sort of liberty-loving, freedom, even my like Republican upbringing just sees these words on the wall here. I don't know if you can read it on Skype or whatever, but somebody graffitied "Give me liberty" or "Give me death" on this wall in the middle of the street. You can't kill us all. Liberate Hong Kong. Fuck the something. I don't know what that says, but just seeing like these messages that like were raised in #Murica to like feel sort of like in our bones as, God's truth on how we should be free and how we should be free of control and immoral government. And I see how you're inspired by what's happening over there, because this is what inspired me, when I was young. And it's literally somebody wrote that right there trying to liberate themselves. Wow, this is so powerful. I mean, it's a tearjerker. Wow, that's awesome. Whew. Like really that's going to be my wallpaper for like the next year, I think. That is just amazing.
Yeah. It's incredibly emotional and inspirational. There's a ton of great content that I think really showcases that. That's been a big part of the movement, is artistic creation. I'll send you my favorite video after this. It's a couple of speeches that protesters have given in English, which I think is really smart. Where one of them is he's yelling, "Give me liberty" or "Give me death." Hong Kong is the home of the brave, and we are brave. Another one is a guy saying, he's a young guy, like probably a teenager, and he's really crying as he's talking to this reporter, and he's saying, we're going to fight for 20 or 30 years. When 2047 comes and China takes over our system, we'll all be slaves. All the students who are young today will be into their middle age, and they'll be slaves, and we'll all be slaves. But we're going to fight for those 20 or 30 years. It's really powerful stuff.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, like I said, this is like this is our opportunity, our brief moment to like learn from somebody else doing it before we have to do it. Because
yeah,
I mean, it's easy to see how we're headed in a direction that things are going to have to be resisted someday, at some point, at some time. And this is an incredible learning opportunity to see how a modern sort of resistance to tyranny can be mounted. So is there? I mean, we've kind of briefly talked about the technology being used. Are there anything else you can talk about in terms of like just general tactics, or what works? Like you said, the old school protest technique was, you'd go chain yourself to a tree, or do a sit-in at the college, the college president's office or something. So how is this different? What's working, and how does it work? What's the mechanism that it works through?
Yeah. So the core tactical and strategic change, I think, revolves around this philosophy called "be water." And that's something Bruce Lee said. He said, "Don't be too soft or too hard. Be water. Be flowing."
Mm.
So the way that works is that the protesters are constantly moving. There are these massive marches of tens of thousands to millions of people, and they are constantly marching on the move, moving. It puts the police off balance. When the police come in and try to disrupt these marches, the protesters will flow around them. They won't necessarily try to hold their ground. They will flow in all directions. They will regroup at secondary sites. So messages will go out on Telegram, police are attacking the main road. Alternate sites are here, 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 and here. People will go to those sites. They will reform marches, and they will move in different directions from there. They'll usually march on police stations. They'll march on government buildings, which demands a response. So then the police have to redeploy, and the protesters will constantly be flowing away like this and regrouping. And what it does basically is it allows protesters to take control of the entire city indefinitely, because they're simply moving away from the limited police resources and eventually reoccupying those same places in a way that they're not taking casualties. And this has already been copied in Catalonia. They had a massive march recently. They shut down the airport, and then they moved off and occupied some government areas. And they were just moving all day, and it allowed them to accomplish a lot more in terms of occupying spaces and disrupting, kind of the normal flow of the city of Barcelona that the government wants to preserve. One thing Catalonia needs to learn and is trying to learn from Hong Kong is how the social media aspect really magnifies their power, because actually there have been massive protests in Catalonia this year, like days ago, that rival Hong Kong in scale, but almost nobody knows about it because they don't have nearly the social media presence. So I think that's another important lesson. There's a lot of interesting tactical things that have worked really well. One of them is the use of masks and hats to circumvent identification. If the police can't capture your face, it's very difficult to then prosecute you for rioting or whatever. It's hard to tie you to some kind of charge if they can't provide positive identification. And it's also hard to follow you home and find you, make you lose your job, and make you get evicted, things like that. So the being incognito, they will bring changes of clothes with them. They'll change in sheltered doorways and things out of sight of camera, so they can kind of change their identities and keep their personal lives safe as they're going out to these mass protests.
So the flow like water thing is a great analogy, and it kind of describes it very succinctly. But what is the goal of continually moving and not being able to like be boxed in or whatever? But I don't know. Did you say the words like take over the city? It was like what is the goal? Like to disrupt the city? To like what is the mechanism of achieving? And the second question is, last time we spoke, there was like a list of 5 demands.
Right.
Can we kind of get an update on what progress has or hasn't been made? So like, and then relate that back to like how moving through the city in this way can kind of force change, I guess.
Sure. Moving through the city and taking control of areas, it'll shut down commercial activity. It'll create tremendous political pressure. This mechanic is present in a lot of things, but where people may think that if mass protests are disrupting everyday life, that would reflect negatively on the protesters and would cause support for the government, basically that never happens. If these disruptions are occurring, it's going to increase support for protesters because the government is not providing, the basic conceit that is responsible for their existence, right? Which is to provide safety, order, normalcy, everyday life. So the taking control of the city is a failure of the government. It creates increased popular support, kind of counterintuitively. It creates immense political pressure. It halts economic activity, which is the primary leverage of Hong Kong. The primary leverage of Hong Kong is this incredibly wealthy, important city, a center for global trade and financial transactions. So those are all of the reasons why that is important and puts pressure on the government. If, like in the US, you just had some people marching for a little while, like an hour, and then they went home, nothing changes. You and I have seen that. We kind of know how that works. But this kind of occupying of the city really demands a response, which is what we've seen. As far as the 5 demands, unfortunately, the situation is still the same as when we last spoke. The extradition bill is not back. It has been killed, which was the original primary aim of the movement. The 4 other demands have not been met. The demand for full democracy, the independent investigation into police brutality, the removal of the characterization of riots, and the release of arrested protesters. However, fewer protesters are getting arrested. I think the police are having less and less success. I think the balance of power is more in favor of the protesters, who are becoming increasingly savvy with their tactics and their safety over time. Recently, the first, what's called a letter of no objection was issued by the police in over 10 days. And what that is when you want to have a public rally, you ask the police to give you a letter of no objection. And the police giving you that letter of no objection makes your rally legal. The police had refused to there were numerous rallies during that time period, numerous marches with over 100,000 people. But the police had been refusing to essentially legalize any of those events. They did so again for the first time on the 15th, and you had 130,000 people. It was completely peaceful. There's some beautiful photos taken. There was international press and attention paid to that. And I think that was really important because it represented a backing down of the police, a loss, if you will. They had, since October 1st, when October 1st got pretty violent and tumultuous, the police had basically said, okay, zero tolerance now, no more protesting. And they were forced to back off of that. And it also showed to the world that, despite all the conflict, Hong Kong still has a desire to ultimately be peaceful. Anytime the police don't attack, there is no violence. The violence is of a defensive strategy. A lot of people don't understand when they see protesters, running over and hitting the police with sticks or whatever, how that can be defensive. But for me, being someone who's in those marches, there are a huge number of everyday people who really will not and cannot be violent. You're talking about pregnant women, children, elderly people, people from everyday life that simply don't have the will or desire. You're talking about 100,000, 200,000 people who are there peacefully and who are pretty defenseless. And so the responsibility of the frontline protesters, the people who you'll see in, padded armor with shields and sticks, is to protect that main body of 100,000, 200,000 people. And the police have been using very non-standard riot control tactics, which is to say they have been unnecessarily violent and counterproductive. normally you want to disperse crowds in riot control. Your objective is to just get them to leave the area. Although that actually doesn't work well in Hong Kong because of this be water strategy where people will just regroup and be everywhere. But what the police do is that they will attack the march from a flank. They will try to cut off and surround a group. They'll beat them up. They'll hit them all with tear gas. Ultimately, they won't arrest very many of them. The people who get arrested are the weakest and most vulnerable protesters. They're young teenage girls. They are, older people. Everyone will be detained. They'll be beaten. They'll be subjected to violence, and then most of them will ultimately be released, except for the handful they decide to arrest. So to prevent that from happening, when the police come and try to surround groups of protesters, then the frontliners have to go out and delay them. And they'll do that with Molotovs, with sticks, with barricades, with shields, umbrellas, and all of that.
So we've been getting a lot of interesting, fascinating comments. So let me just try and go through some of these here and see if they spark any good thoughts from you. Let's see. Hey, Cop Block, Texas here. Hey, good to see you. Welcome to the stream. I wonder if the protesters throw their umbrellas with an atlatl. That's awesome. Let's see. A lot of comments on the strategy that you were talking about. Decentralization. Talking about how militias should be organized that way here. How is the facial recognition over there was a question.
So my understanding is that it's widely used. I don't know the details on how effective the technology is, but it's definitely a major fear and concern of the protesters. And a lot of time is spent trying to circumvent that. Recently, they've started cutting down security camera poles, which I think is brilliant. I think that's great. There is an innocence to most of the Hong Kong protesters. They just last year, these people were just normal people. They don't want to commit crimes. They don't want to commit vandalism. They don't want to be violent. So there has been an evolution and escalation as they realize different things are necessary. And I think they've just recently become willing to fully destroy these cameras. Previously, they would spray paint them. We've seen that since about a month and a half ago. That's really hard.
Just look at this photo. Like, these are epic. This is epic stuff, ladies and gentlemen.
It's incredible. I recommend everybody go and follow it as much as they can.
It just pulls at the heartstrings, man. That's amazing.
It really does.
Whew. So Back Alley Philosophy, contact me on Discord. I'll see if I can hook you up. I'm not familiar with FNet or the project you're talking about. Let's see.
Another thing is laser pointers. There's been mass use of laser pointers within the movement, which I think have been pretty effective. They are used to blind drones. There's a lot of police drones. They've been used to blind helicopters. The Hong Kong police have military-grade helicopters, much heavier stuff than you'll see here, which will do surveillance and have been accused of dropping marking powders and other chemicals. So they'll use laser pointers against that. They'll use laser pointers to blind police snipers and police watchmen, I guess, people on Overwatch. Some of the benefits of the laser pointers is that they're cheap, they're accessible, and they're quite anonymous. Like, if you were firing some kind of projectile, it would actually be much easier to identify you than if you were in a crowd with a laser pointer. And so what you'll have is you'll have hundreds of laser pointers within these marches that are all homing in on disrupting drones and helicopters and police.
Yeah, and some lasers can be powerful enough to actually cause like vision damage and actually damage cameras and things like that. So it's not like necessarily a benign weapon. That you can do damage with a high watt laser pointer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Cop Block Hot Springs says, I don't think the police have started to crack down yet, even a little. What's your response to that? Do you think that's the case? Do you think, I mean, like,
I've heard that opinion, and I mean, it depends what you mean by that. They have definitely cracked down. They have started aggressively going out and attacking these protesters when there's no need to. They've started trying to, outflank and surround and beat down groups of protesters. They've started shooting live rounds, which is not something they were doing at the beginning of the movement. It's really not something that is ever necessary for them to do, except as a consequence of their own incompetence. We've seen live rounds be fired maybe a dozen times now, and in every instance, it's because individual officers will run off and get themselves surrounded. And that is rule number one. Do not do that in riot control. I had some riot control training in the Marine Corps, and that's foundational. That's like rule -1, right? Stay in formation. There's more protesters than you. Don't get surrounded. So there has been a crackdown. There has been an increased use of force, increased brutality. Undercover cops are going in and committing violence and vandalism and starting fires. The reasons for that are unclear to me, but it has been revealed. You can see the riot police meeting up with these groups of undercovers dressed as protesters and, high-fiving and reintegrating. What else? There have been thousands of rounds of tear gas shot. You can compare it to earlier weeks. There's been a steady escalation in the amount of munitions used.
So let's see, we had some other questions. What is the female situation in the protest? Nothing gets done here because I believe the majority of women are okay with things.
I don't really agree with that second part, because I think the majority of men are complacent, probably equally complacent.
I'm just reading the question. This is not an endorsement.
No, absolutely. I'm just responding.
Go ahead.
There has been incredible involvement by women. So in the 2014 Umbrella Revolution, women played basically a completely support role. They provided medical care. They carried materials like water bottles and bandages and things like that. They were very much in a support role. But this movement is completely different. You see a lot of women on the front lines. Some people have estimated that there may be more women on the front lines. And when we say women, we're talking about girls, primarily girls like 15 to 26. I'm not sure why that is, but there has been talk about the evolution of the stereotypical Hong Kong girl, because Hong Kong has been an affluent place for a long time. So there's kind of a valley girl stereotype with Hong Kong girls. They're, princess types. They're shallow and self-absorbed, and they're only worried about, trendy food and nice clothes and jewelry and all those things. But there has been this discussion in the media and among the protesters that basically that stereotype has been obliterated, because young women have been on the front lines. They have been among the heaviest casualties. A young protester was shot in the eye. That caused a big eye patch covering your eye protest thing for several weeks. They're suiting up. They're going out there. They're building barricades. They're running comms. They're, getting in the police's face with sticks. So yeah, that has been an interesting aspect. And the young women that I talked to, and I kind of asked why they were so involved, they said, I just feel like I have to do something for Hong Kong, and I have to be part of this. This is my home as well.
God, just look at this. It's so inspirational. The activists here need to, what are you guys doing? You're just virtue signaling compared to these people. This is insane. What I'm seeing a lot of Pepe meme stuff. What's that about? What's their association to the Pepe thing?
So I think most of these people who are in the protest movement were not very politically involved prior to the movement. And so you've seen the appropriation of a lot of symbology from different sides. And I think it's mostly just because it's popular, they recognize it, and they're using it. So one is black bloc. You may have noticed that black bloc is the color scheme of the protests. People dress in black, their flags are black, their masks are black. So they've kind of appropriated, the aesthetics of the black bloc, but they're not the vast majority of them. They're not really black. They're not really anarcho-socialists or anarcho-communists. They're just fighting for their basic freedom. But they've appropriated that symbolism. Pepe, it's a big thing on
That meme illustrates everything right there too. Oh man, this is so good. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So I think it was something popular. I'm sure some of the people who are informal, anonymous influencers within the movement liked Pepe. They liked 4chan. 4chan has had, probably not as much anymore, but it has had a tremendous effect, a tremendous influence on our online culture here in the US. So I'm sure it was the same and is the same in Hong Kong, to where the people who are making a lot of these memes that people share and who are not, as anonymous individuals, not as what we would traditionally think of as a leader, but as a kind of anonymous influencer of the conversation. They're the kind of people who like 4chan memes. And so that's probably how it got started and spread to become symbols of the movement. And the movement is great about adopting new symbols. Like they adopted Mei from Overwatch overnight,
Which was awesome, by the way. Wow, yeah. Awesome. For those that don't know, Mei is an Overwatch character. She's a Chinese Overwatch character, or maybe you want to explain it. But so Blizzard is ultra concerned with the Chinese government's, I guess, current impression of them as a company and the things that they're, with the guy in their tournament, saying free Hong Kong on their live stream that puts them at odds with the Chinese government, inside of which, that country, they want to sell a lot of their video games. And so what an amazing troll to use a character from one of their games to be a symbol of the movement against China. It's an amazing troll, genius level, 1000 IQ stuff. Yeah,
that was awesome. And I think that again shows just how agile the movement is, because within a day there were hundreds of Mei memes, Mei wearing protester attire, Mei with free Hong Kong on her clothing. To speak to Blizzard just briefly, I think a lot of people don't realize the vast tentacles of Chinese mega corporations. So the company Tencent, which owns League of Legends, which does a bunch of stuff under their own name, they own a 10% share of Blizzard Activision now, which is amazing. And my understanding is that they own significant shares of every major video game publisher. Americans are a lot more hesitant to invest in video games and take risks, and the Chinese are willing to do so because they see the political and cultural opportunities there, not just the monetary return on investment. And the movie studios are the same way. AMC, I think, is wholly owned by some Chinese company, and you saw it in DreamWorks with their kids movie, which had a Chinese propaganda map in it.
What's the Winnie the Pooh meme connection? I've seen Winnie the Pooh and I don't get it. I guess I haven't been told about that one.
Yeah. Basically some mainland Chinese young people, students, at one point said Xi Jinping, the supreme leader of China, looks like Winnie the Pooh. So it became a meme first on mainland Chinese internet. People would share pictures of Winnie the Pooh when they meant Xi Jinping, and it was, this parody, kind of taking shots at him. So Xi Jinping, who doesn't like being made fun of, he actually banned Winnie the Pooh's name, all of this imagery.
Oh, that is the last thing you want to do. Oh no.
So consequently, the whole rest of the world that wants to make fun of Xi Jinping, they make sure to never let that die, that he is Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, you're inviting the entire world to use that against you for the entire rest of your whole life. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Somebody says people don't think that children were there during the U.S. Revolution, and somebody else says, well, children were loading muskets. Is there much involvement from younger people, like kids, or are people kind of keeping them safe?
A lot of kids are in the peaceful portions of the marches. And when I say kids, I mean people younger than 14. I wouldn't say they're a high proportion, but maybe every 20th protester that you might see in a march is going to be under 14.
Wow. Okay.
The kids are definitely coming out. The kids care about it. Their parents care about it. Even their parents are part of the younger generation. Now we've gotten to that point. Anyone who has younger children is going to be part of this millennial generation. So the kids are coming, under 14 are coming out. They're not, they're not doing dangerous stuff. They're not building barricades at all from what I've seen. But when you talk about kids age 14 to 18, they're a massive part of the movement. I would say probably 40%, something like that, of the frontliners, the people who are clashing, going shield to shield with the police, are under 18. So yeah, okay. That is demographic dynamic.
Anthony Green asks, do you think you can win?
Yes, I do. I think Hong Kong is tremendously important to the economic survival of China. I think even more than a lot of people realize. China has a lot of economic problems. They had this housing and development bubble where they built way too much stuff and they incurred a lot of debt, and no one lives there. I think a lot of people have seen like the ghost cities of China. So they have this debt crisis from overdevelopment, very similar to what happened in the U.S. in 2008. And they don't have a lot of ways out of that. The yuan, the RMB, the Chinese currency, is not convertible. So they can't just get foreign funding directly. They need a place like Hong Kong where you can change USD into Hong Kong dollars and then Hong Kong dollars into RMB. And there's Hong Kong's importance to trade. The preferred trade relationship of Hong Kong is actually one of the major ways that China has avoided feeling the full pain of the trade war, because all the goods imported from Hong Kong are zero tariff. So a lot of Chinese companies are cheating by transshipping through Hong Kong. And they do that with other countries all around the world, because Hong Kong is the most economically, or has been rated the most economically free city in the world. So the vast majority of countries have most preferred trading status with Hong Kong. So I think Hong Kong is tremendously important economically, and China basically has two options. They have economic suicide and they have make some concessions. So I think Hong Kong can win. I don't know when they'll win. And I'm not positive they will win. China is sometimes not the smartest actor. They may crack down anyway just because they're being stupid, or they may decide that their political survival on the mainland, which is one of the implications of what's going on in Hong Kong, depends on them cracking down. So I'm not 100% sure that Hong Kong will win, but I definitely think that they can win. They're going up against a juggernaut, but they themselves are an economic juggernaut.
Yeah, for sure. A couple questions kind of rolled into one. What do you think this flow like water strategy, or how will the people handle when the actual like police or military actually starts shooting people, or like they roll tanks in the street? Like when they bring out the hard stuff, what do you think? How does this go? How does this continue?
Yeah, so that scenario in itself is kind of the end of the story in a way. I think that scenario is actually a lot more unlikely than people think. that it is, because what that would mean is a full economic shutdown of Hong Kong. It would mean Westerners fleeing Hong Kong. It would mean the financial institutions closing, the financial markets freezing. It would mean a credit crunch in China. I think it rationally speaking, if everyone's being rational, it can't happen, and that's why it hasn't happened yet. But saying it does happen, I think that Be Water strategy will still be very effective in doing the same things, which is reducing casualties, extending the hostile resources. And American General wrote an article recently that I skimmed through. I will try to find it so I can share it with you. But basically, he wrote that if the Chinese military, if the PLA come into Hong Kong, A, they're not going to win, and B, it's going to be a very bloody affair for them. He essentially predicted a Northern Ireland type of situation, but with completely different demographics. Hong Kong is an extremely dense, one of the most dense urban environments in the world. Basically, it's not a place where tanks can be used effectively. People can be dropping things from their balcony because the average apartment building someone lives in is 25 stories. You know, you can be throwing Molotovs, but you could also be throwing glass cups, and you'll really do a lot of damage. It's going to be hard to take over and occupy these buildings, to make their way through an urban environment. It's really a perfect place for a guerrilla campaign. And unlike in Northern Ireland, where you had a minority of people, a relatively small minority of people that supported the actions of the IRA and supported them materially, in Hong Kong, you have vastly overwhelming support. I've seen that the polls suggest 80 to 85% support for the movement. So it would be incredibly difficult for the military or militarized police to operate in Hong Kong. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about how riot control works, and they think that you can just shoot everybody. But there's a reason that basically never happens, or it's never a go-to, because that dramatically escalates the situation. And the protests being like 100,000, 200,000 strong, if you take it to that level, they could pretty easily overwhelm some or all of the opposing force. The police in Hong Kong are the largest police force in the world, proportionate to the population, but they're still only 33,000 strong. If you have a few 100,000, you could overrun them without any weapons even.
Wow, I mean, intense video that I found here, but I think it's important to play this stuff because a lot of people somehow just never connect the actual force used by the police against the people when resistances like this happen.
Yeah, the people who say, the police are not cracking down, or they're not being violent, I would invite them to watch a lot of the videos that people have captured on the ground.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give people a sample while you're talking, because both what you're saying and what we're looking at here are fascinating and very important stuff. This is if you guys aren't in these Telegram groups, you really, really should be. And if you look at the last interview that we did, there's links to them in the description. And after this goes up, I'll make sure that the links are in the descriptions again as well. If anybody wants to go pull up the last video, the description, and maybe paste that in the comments for the people watching now, it would probably be useful. So Cop Block Hot Spring says, so what he's hearing is that if the military comes in heavy, then it kind of changes from protest to terrorism. And I think what you mean by terrorism is more just I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. What do you say to that?
I mean, terrorism is a very loaded term. It would turn into a guerrilla war. It is, relatively speaking, quite low-level conflict right now. People are not dying every day. The people of Hong Kong, they have incredible bravery, commitment, discipline. They're not going to back down just because the tanks roll in. It would evolve into a guerrilla campaign at that point.
Would you still be over there?
I would try. I'm already concerned I'm not going to get in. I've done a lot of what I've been doing publicly, which is not the smart thing to do. But basically, my mentality is people have done X, Y, and Z and taken every precaution, and they've still, paid the price of being found out, being uncovered, being targeted. So I would rather do what I do openly and hopefully have a bigger positive effect that way. And in the event I do get arrested, that's not necessarily a bad thing for the movement. I think that could potentially be a good, positive, advantageous development. So that's why I haven't been taking the precautions that are recommended. But one consequence of that is I might be detained at the airport and sent home, and the materials I'm bringing might be confiscated. So that's a concern of mine. I think I'll get in. I'm pretty sure I'll get in. But if there's tanks in there, probably nobody's getting in. So that's a thing.
Yeah, that's probably true. So, like, do you have family here on stateside that you're staying in touch with when you're over there? So, like, if something happens, they're going to know who to contact, and like, do you have people over here that are paying attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I have plans in place. Basically, like, if you don't hear me for 48 hours, start looking for me, because I might be disappeared or arrested or something. And I have people over there also who are looking out for me, who have my contact information so that they can, keep an eye out and also contact people. Like, there are lawyers groups over there that do pro bono work for arrested protesters and things like that. Okay.
All right. Well, we could talk after the stream a little bit, but is there anything else that you'd like to communicate with this kind of status update on, what you're up to?
I guess just keep paying attention. Please keep sharing, spreading awareness, keep the public eye on. That's the best way to help and protect the people of Hong Kong who are fighting for fundamental human freedom, and who I believe are fighting a kind of new Spanish Civil War. It's a conflict that has implications for all of us, for the whole planet, for our rights, for future movements. Governments will be looking at, how to crush protesters, how protesters fight back, and whether they can win. The Spanish Civil War set the tone for the rise of fascism up to World War II. And I think the result in Hong Kong could be the same way, where companies, corporations, as well as governments, decide, can we get away with this level of authoritarianism? How much can we control the people? So yeah, please keep paying attention, keep getting involved. Join the Telegram groups; those are great.
Yeah, it is a good reminder that not only are we watching to learn from what's going on over there as freedom activists, but governments are certainly watching what's going on to learn how to stop us.
Yeah.
As ominous as that may sound, it's definitely true. In fact, they're probably putting a lot of resources into studying what's happening over there so that they can learn. Patriot asks if there's other Telegram channels to follow. There's 3, I think, or there's 2, but one has a link to give you access to another one. Again, I'll put the links in the description of this video after it's posted. So keep an eye on that.
I'll send you the brand new English language memes only channel. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, if you want to send it to me now through whatever means you have available, I'll post it in chat before we end the stream, just so the people who are watching can get that immediately.
Oh, okay.
Guys, the questions in the comments, the questions from you guys have been top notch. I really appreciate it. This has been a fascinating and informative and important conversation, and I feel like the things that he's saying makes a lot of sense, and being able to hear him talk about it while we're looking at these live video and images from on the ground over there is super important. Oh, did I miss this call? Let's check. All right, let's see. I just want to make sure we don't lose him. He's probably messaging me stuff right now. Yeah, this has been a super awesome stream, guys. And again, thanks for your participation. Great questions. Okay, we're getting some messages here. One moment here. I want to make sure that I get these addresses to you. Okay, here's one. Here's the meme group. Bear with me. I'm copy pasting into chat for you guys. If you like this channel and what it provides you, please consider donating through any of the methods that we make that available to you. Disenthrall.me/platforms will give you all of our platforms. We have Patreon. We have there we go. Are we getting you back here? I don't have video just yet.
Sorry, I messed it up again.
Totally fine, man. I'm just copy pasting your links here.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna click that one too because I want me some memes. Yes, give me the Hong Kong memes. Join group, yes. All right, cool. Meme warfare is what most Americans are only good at. Meme warfare at this point. They don't know how to do anything else. All right, cool. Anything else? I guess you kind of gave us your closing. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about, please feel free. Now's your opportunity. Any last minute questions in the chat? Now's your chance. Again, please, we welcome your support here at Disenthrall. We have a great deal of equipment that we put together and purchase to maintain, these studios and to live stream this stuff to you. So your support is appreciated. Again, just as a reminder, I will be extending the posting access to our Facebook page to Ben here so that he can keep us up to date with the videos and the news and the stories that he follows. I've been seeing it on his personal page, and it's been some really good stuff. So if you don't follow Facebook, or if you don't follow Disenthrall on Facebook, that's probably a good idea. I'll try and cross-post things that he posts over to our Gab account as well as our Twitter account for those that don't have the Book of Face. So that's an option for you as well. Okay, we got, it looks like one last question. Last question for you, and then we'll end the stream. What is the judicial system based on in Hong Kong? Oh, and then we just got like a blast of questions. So if you have a couple more minutes, we'll go through these. If not, I want to respect your time.
I'll stick around. I'm no expert by any means, but my understanding is that the legal system in Hong Kong is based off the British system. I think that their courts are modeled off of the British judiciary system.
I'm sorry, this meme. Oh my God, this is hilarious. Sorry.
The Hong Kong creators are genius. The artists, the meme makers, the social media people. It's great stuff.
Oh my God. I'm going to try not to laugh while you continue to answer that question.
Well, I love this. It shows how important we make fun of the social media side, but the social media side is so important to a democracy.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry. Yes. Oh. Yeah.
So they've been firing so much tear gas that you can't see. It's unreal. I'm pretty sure it's dangerous. Like, it could kill someone. They're firing so much tear gas. But that was a funny picture where this cop was just kind of being weird in a massive cloud of tear gas.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. What you were answering a question. Oh, the judicial system.
Yeah, I'm not an expert, but I believe it's based on the British system. That's all I could say on that subject.
Okay. All right. Next one was, are you doing anything for BlizzCon? Are you asking me or him? I'm not going to BlizzCon. I probably, if I do something, it'll just be here on my channel. I don't want to support anything Blizzard does right now, in general. And that was before this Hong Kong stuff. I was kind of burnt on the company to begin with. Are you doing anything for BlizzCon, Ben?
No, I'm sure other people are, which is something that you should look forward to. There was a recent thing where an activist bought 300 Rockets tickets, and he filled the stands with 300 Hong Kong protesters wearing shirts and making protest hand signs, and that was awesome. So I'm sure there will be something going on at BlizzCon.
Every day says you're posting links to the feed and they're being taken off. I'm sure YouTube is doing something like that. I apologize. If you want to share stuff, this is just for everybody's general knowledge. If you're not in the Disenthrall Discord server, there's a lot of really nice, friendly, helpful, kind volunteers in there that are really good at having polite, decent people, decent human conversations. It's not like most other Discord servers that are filled with drama. I don't let that happen. That's not what it's for us. So if you want to share links and stuff, check out our Discord server. I'm going to look at some more memes. Do we have, okay, I think that was all. Oh, I'm not sure what Urgers are. What can be done for what is that? Urgers in the West? Urgers? I don't know what that is.
Oh, the Uyghurs.
Oh, Uyghurs.
Yeah, it's even funnier sounding. The Uyghurs, the Uyghurs are a Muslim minority group in Western China. That the Chinese are basically trying to eradicate. They have 2 million of them in re-education camps. They're really creepy. You can find some YouTube documentaries about it. They make them like put on makeup and do dances and like praise China every day. It's very bizarre. They have like 2 months of just teaching them how to make a bed, like a hotel style cornered bed. It's very, very scary, very disturbing. They're, doing torture things and basically trying to eliminate their culture and language. The U.S. Congress has started taking action on that. I don't approve of the government doing things. I like to do the things, but there can be positive effects for the pressure that the U.S. government puts on other authoritarian governments. What you can do for the Uyghurs, that's a
powerful one. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Woo. Watch list: Microsoft, Adidas, what is that? Tesla, Coca-Cola, Netflix, Google, Blizzard, Facebook, Apple, Disney, NBA, and South Park. South Park. Oh, the Bad Boys. That's South Park. Got it. Interesting.
Standing up to China, especially China's commercial interests, is a very good way. And, well, actually, I don't know that it's a very good way, but it's probably the best way that you can help the Uyghurs is to undermine the authoritarian Chinese government. I've been talking with a couple of activists stateside about trying to start a BDS movement to target Chinese companies, especially Chinese companies that are outspoken supporters of authoritarianism and oppression, because there is some difference within how they conduct themselves publicly. China, the source of all of China's power in the modern world is its money. It's why the CCP is actually very popular among mainland Chinese people, because everyone's gotten much richer. It's why there are many countries in the world, from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, to parts of Africa and South America, where the countries and even the people in the countries love China. And it's because of Chinese money and the investments that they're doing. I was arguing with a Serbian man on YouTube in my YouTube comments, and he was just, oh, I love China. China can do nothing wrong. And it's terrifying. That's just because China's been investing a lot of money in Serbia and building trains and stuff. They didn't directly brainwash him. They didn't have to do anything. Just using their money, they were able to make him this diehard China supporter and defender. They're also doing it to Italy. They're trying to break the EU to make it so that a large enough number of European countries are partisan supporters of China that the EU cannot oppose them in any meaningful way. So what we can do to undermine Chinese economic power, I think, is probably the best and only way to help the Uyghur people. You can't even go there. I mean, I can't say that I would go there just because it's incredibly high risk, low reward, but you won't get close. It's all locked down. It's militarized. They'll arrest you, before you get close to protesting near the Uyghurs. So that's a really tough one.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, I think we're gonna call it there. This has been a fascinating episode, one of my favorite I think I've ever done on this channel. So, Ben, thank you for joining us for a second time with more information. And if we need to make a third and a fifth and a 10th, we definitely will. This is really important. What you're doing, Ben, is
Absolutely.
really important, and I would say heroic. So, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. The heroes are the people who've been doing it for 135 days. I can't imagine. It's so stressful and terrifying.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I appreciate it.